There's no time that you find a person in need except that you are to blame somebody who took more than their share. It was God's original intention to provide sustenance equally for all of his creatures. All of them. They're all entitled to this sustenance. Now, if on planet Earth there are people that are poor, this is not the fault of God. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام والمهديين وسلم تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear sister and companion, Runa.
Wa alaikum salam, Father.
Inshallah, you're doing well.
Thank you, I'm good.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Father, for having me.
God bless you. So today we want to talk about a very important topic. I think that this is going to mark the beginning of us beginning to discuss topics of this nature, that have to do with aspects of the divine just state. And it will also have to do with social justice, and will have to do with what it is that the Qa'im or the divine just state will have to offer mankind, highlighting basically the differences between our ideals, virtues, the virtues of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, the prophets and the messengers, and those so-called virtues that modern day society upholds. Mm-hmm. Now, the Prince of the Believers, alayhi salam, he made a statement, and I think it was a very important statement, a critical one, and one that paints a very important image. It's one that painters could paint and make it into an incredible painting. He said, alayhi salam, if poverty was a man, I would have killed him. And that's extremely important. That is a very serious and powerful statement. If poverty was a man, I would have murdered him, or I would have killed him. So what can we extract from this statement? We can extract from the statement that if Imam Ali alayhi salam is the messenger of God, if Imam Ali alayhi salam represents the divine characteristics and attributes of God, if he is a divinely appointed Imam who is a manifestation of God in creation, then poverty would have been his enemy. That means that poverty is the enemy of all mankind. And poverty is a manifestation of evil. We can extract also that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was emphasizing the fact that poverty must be eliminated at all costs. And that had he had the ability to, if poverty had manifested itself as a man, it would have been a divine duty and a divine decree to assassinate poverty.
So it's the number one priority before solving any other problem.
Well, if it's not the number one priority, it's one of the top priorities for mankind. And this idea of poverty being eliminated, we find it to be one of those main aspects of the divine just state that's highlighted. Whenever we speak about, or the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam have spoken about the Mahdi or the Qa'im and the acts that he does, you'll always find narrations that say things to the effect of, there will come a caliph who will pass out the money without counting it. Right? So you get these images in the narrations of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, that he's coming forward, that he's passing out the money he's alleviating the suffering of the orphan, the suffering of the widow. There are narrations to the effect that state that in the divine just state itself, a brother or believing brother will place his hands in the pocket of his fellow believing brother or sister, that people will go forth and they'll look for somebody to give their charity to, and they will be unable to find anybody. That to that degree, that problem is solved because he comes and he fills the earth up with equity, equality, and justice. And equality and equity always comes before justice, and is also a prior manifestation of the coming of justice itself. When people think of justice, they think that, okay, now everybody is being treated equally and fairly. And when we look at the extremity in the stance of the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, in particular the stance of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib in that narration or that hadith about poverty, we find that the other prophets and messengers, and rather the other religions, were also pretty extreme in their stances against poverty and against rich people, right? Who are the ones who hoard the property or the wealth. You have, for example, the Holy Quran. It states in there very clearly, in one verse in Surah At-Tawbah, it states that those who hoard the gold and silver and they do not spend it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are in for a painful torment. Okay? Right there in that verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind of condemning those people who save gold and silver rather than spend it. So the very idea of saving wealth, while there are other people that are in need, because spending in the way of Allah would be spending in the way of His creation, right? His creatures. And we have spoken in the previous episodes about that beautiful narration in which on the Day of Judgment, there will be God and He will be questioning His servant, and He will ask him, why did you not feed me when I was hungry? And the servant will say, what do you mean? How is the Lord of the worlds, who's rich, how can He be hungry or in need? And then God will remind him that he had a brother, or he had a sister, he had somebody, a poor person who was in need of a meal or in need of something, and the believer failed to successfully give him his rights. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equates in the Holy Quran and in the narrations spending in His way with spending on His creation or in the way of His creatures. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi has stated on a number of times that the reason for their existing poor people, the reason why poverty came into being, was because of the rich. He states in one narration, there's no time that you find a person in need except that you are to blame somebody who took more than their share. So in these words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he explains perfectly clear that it was God's original intention to provide sustenance equally for all of His creatures. All of them.
SubhanAllah.
They're all entitled to this sustenance. Now, if on planet Earth there are people that are poor, this is not the fault of God. God had provided that sustenance. So what is the problem? Whose fault it is? Why is this person not getting their sustenance? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the reason is because somebody stole that sustenance. Somebody took his share, and he also took the share of the poor person. He took double portion. And so the food itself was not enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we see throughout the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it sheds further light on the words of the Prince of the Believers sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now we find that poverty should have been killed because it was evil. And now we're beginning to see how evil poverty really is. Because now we know that poverty is the result of greed. It's a result of selfishness. It's a result of abandoning the rights of others. It's a result of thievery. It's an act of theft. Okay? So what about rich people? That's the big question. And we have in the Holy Bible, Jesus making a statement that is no less radical than the statement that the Prince of the Believers, ﷺ, made. One time Jesus was walking with his companions, and there was this man who approaches him, and he basically begins to beg him. He's so excited. He looks at Jesus and he's like, wow, you are extremely wise. I love you so much. I've been following you. I want to be one of your disciples. I want to join your caravan. Let me be one of your crew. Jesus, he turns, he looks at him. The Bible describes this man as being a rich man. And he gives him one simple condition in order to follow him. He says to him, go and sell all of your belongings and distribute it to the poor, and then come and follow me. So Jesus is making this condition that without doing it, the man will not be allowed to join the caravan of Jesus. Now, understanding what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, taking into light the words of Jesus, we now understand that what Jesus was commanding this rich man to do was to return back the belongings in which he unjustly took and stole from the poor people back to the poor people. Even if he didn't know that he was stealing, even if he wasn't consciously stealing, and the fact that he hoarded all of this wealth and gained all of this wealth and didn't spend it, it was above his need. He didn't give it back to those who were in need. He watched and saw as fellow human beings were suffering, and he didn't take out of the money that was just sitting in his room, right, or sitting in his safe and give it back to the people. That was a sin, because God never gave him that wealth for him. Rather, he only entrusted it with him as a means, right, of it reaching those people whom it was intended for. And those people are his fellow brothers and sisters, fellow believers, poor people, fellow human beings that are on the planet. But the narration and the words and the stance of Jesus gets even darker. It really does. And it's even more bad news for the rich man, because it doesn't stop there. If it had stopped there, there would be room to speculate that, okay, well, maybe you just can't be one of the close ones, or maybe you just can't be like in the top degree, or you can't be like the disciples if you're rich, but you can still enter into heaven. And I think that that is the prominent thought process and belief that is held by most Christians that live in the West, right? In the West, I mean, all of these Western society, these Western countries such as America or Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the UK, the EU, all these countries. But when the man finds it too difficult to do and he walks away, Jesus states, he says to his companions, well, indeed I tell you, it is more difficult for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And anybody who's held in their hands a needle, a sewing needle, and looked at the eye that is only big enough for the thread to be put through, to imagine a camel entering into that is preposterous. Anybody with any sort of intellect or an ounce of intelligence would tell you that it is impossible for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And therefore, what Jesus was saying was that it is impossible for anybody who is rich to enter into paradise. There are no rich people that enter into heaven. It is an impossibility. When you see a camel successfully passing through the eye of a needle, then go tell God or have hopes in God that a rich man will be in paradise. And that means that rich people are the enemy. Rich people are the disbelievers. Rich people are the enemy of the messengers and the enemies of the prophets and the enemies of the imams and the enemies of society and the enemies of humanity in general. This idea is further proven in Judaism in multiple places. And in particular, in one of the laws that exists in Leviticus, you'll find that God had ordained for Jewish people, because there are so many laws that govern different aspects of life. So this particular law was governing the aspect of farming. And it basically states that if a farmer was to farm a particular plot of land, so imagine a farmer, he goes and he, puts tomatoes in the ground, puts, plants potatoes, plants whatever. When it comes time to harvest the crop, he is not allowed to harvest all of the crop. He has to leave a certain amount of the crop in the ground.
Okay.
And the reason for it is so that it could be for the poor or anybody that passes by that needs it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because they even can go themselves and take it.
They can go themselves and take it. And they don't go over there and ask permission. No, it's their right to take it.
Okay.
This doesn't even belong to the farmer. And if they don't do that, then the rest of the crop that he took would be considered to be an illegal gaining.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
So this is much different than communism. This is not where the state takes all of the gainings and distributes it, but rather it's this idea that God is trying to teach over time, from the time of Moses to the time of Jesus to the time of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, this idea that humanity has an obligation to take care of one another from their own selves, without being forced to do so by a state or by a particular entity, all right? They have to do so themselves. It's kind of like that African belief that, I am happy because we are happy. I am filled because we are filled. That the individual cannot attain happiness and comfort and justice and equity unless all of society and all of their neighbors are also attaining the exact same levels of comfort. So Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says that if poverty was a man, I would have killed him. I say that today, in the time of the Qa'im, poverty is not a man, but poverty is a group of men. Poverty is a system. Poverty is a belief that must be eliminated in order that prosperity and comfort be established for all mankind. There was a report that was issued by a non-governmental organization in the UK, and basically it had concluded that if you take 95% of the world's population and you put them on one side, and you take 1% of the wealthiest people on the planet and you put it in the other hand, that the 1% of the human beings on planet Earth own more than 95% of all human beings. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
that is incredible injustice if the prophets and the messengers were telling the truth. So you can't have it both ways. You can't think that capitalism, which enables people, enables the world to come to this state where 1% of human beings, right, own 95% of the wealth, right? Or they're wealthier than 95% of their fellow human beings. You can't believe in capitalism and think that that's a good thing and a just thing, and at the same time believe in the Prince of the Believers, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and believe in Muhammad, and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believe in Jesus, and believe in Moses, and believe in the God of Judaism and Christianity and Islam. It's an impossibility. You can't really do that, because they are two contradictory teachings that cannot coexist at the same time. The idea of capitalism is the very manifestation of the man that the Prince of the Believers, Ali ibn Abi Talib, said that he would kill if he found him, because he's even worse than that. He's the father of the man that Ali ibn Abi Talib sought to kill. He's the demon that gave birth to him. The poverty is merely the offspring or the seed of this demon called capitalism that has created so much injustice in the world.
I mean, capitalism teaches us that competition is healthy, and it's kind of helping us in our nature to perform, or that we need like this incentive of competition between each other to work harder or to work at all. But I mean, you're clearly saying that the human being has like a natural want to work, to flourish, and that civilization has a different definition. I mean, it's not competition, obviously.
Yeah, I'm saying that competition is healthy until it's deadly, all right? And I think that now that we know, and it's a well-known fact, and it's the reality is even worse than that. Officially, they say that 25,000 people die every day out of starvation. These are people that God created, that He placed on the planet, that He provided, according to Muhammad and the family of Muhammad and the prophets and the messengers, their sustenance. The idea with God is that what the teaching is saying essentially is that if God created a human being, He has the responsibility of providing the sustenance for that human being. And God's saying that He does provide the sustenance for that human being. And if you look into nature, yourself, you can find that this fact is very clear, that it's a proven fact. You have ecosystems that are in the sea, in the air, in the jungles, in the forest, in the desert, on the land. Like every creature that's created by God can find its sustenance without working a 9-to-5 job. The bear simply plucks the berries that grow from the trees and eats it, right? The ants and the insects on the ground, they find the leftovers that were dropped by mankind, and they go and they pick it up and they eat it, right? And the same thing is true for the bees. They simply go over to the flowers and they take the pollen or the nectar from the flowers, and they go and they, produce honey or whatever. So the thing about it is that it's only mankind who is the only mammal on the planet that has this ideology that you have to work and provide something in exchange for your daily bread. And if you don't, or you're not lucky enough to be able to find a job or perform a trade that will win for you your daily bread, then it is okay if you die, right? Mm-hmm. That's the general consensus that human beings are upon today. Why? Because all of the governments in the world are allowing that on a daily basis, 25,000 people die of starvation, right? And malnutrition. So if the people accept that, if the governments accept that, that means that they believe that that's okay, that this fact is true, right? There's no excuse for it because the resources on the earth are enough to eliminate this and take care of this. If you have people on the planet that are living basically off of like $1 a day, can you imagine that? And you have other people that are becoming billionaires and trillionaires, right? Elon Musk, for example, he's getting ready to become the world's first trillionaire. Can you imagine that? $1 trillion. While there's other people that are living off of $1 a day and they don't have access to healthcare or to the basic necessities, food, water, any of these things. God is saying that it is the right of all human beings, okay, by proxy of being created, just because they were created, right? Just because they're existing, they automatically have the right to their daily bread. If you were to take the total amount of money that is generated on the entire planet, right, on a day-to-day basis and redistribute that amongst all human beings equally, you would be giving every single human being about $35 per day. And that is more than enough for all human beings on the planet. Can you imagine that? And that's every person, every person. So if you have a family, if you have a husband and you have 4 children, that's 35 times 6. Yeah. That is more than enough money to feed those individuals. $35 per person. You could go in the morning and you can eat at McDonald's. You can go at lunch and you can eat at Pizza Hut. You can go at dinner and you can cook a grand meal and you would still have money left over to save or to spend on whatever it is that you needed. It is a catastrophic state that mankind is in today, and but they accept it.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that Elon Musk is a follower of like a new type of philosophy, something called long-termism. So they're saying, the rich people, that they need to hoard because they're planning for the far-ahead future of mankind to turn the situation around, basically, which is a lie, because like the system is so fine-tuned. Like when people convert, for example, to Islam, they're always confronted with these arguments that God fine-tuned everything, the cosmos, and if you would bring the sun a little bit closer, it would like not be possible to live on Earth. So I did assume that's true when I became religious. But I see from your explanation that not only in the animal kingdom, but also in the human kingdom, if everybody would just follow their kind of natural driving force to do something or to go look for their sustenance without working extra hard, there should be, even from the byproducts, enough for everybody, and there would be prosperity.
Yeah.
That's
well, here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying as well is that like I am a believer. I'm a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. That God, I believe in him. I also believe in the Prophet Muhammad and his family. I also accept Jesus Christ as the promised Messiah. I believe in him. I accept him. I love him. I seek his guidance. I seek the guidance of the prophets and the messengers. I accept Moses and the Israelite prophets. Okay, so I believe in them and I believe in their promises. I believe that there's a heaven and a hell. And according to what they stated, they told me through their writings and their books that Elon Musk and people like him are never going to get into heaven, that these are people of hellfire. So if they are people of hellfire and they're going in a different direction than I'm going, I want to go to heaven, they're already condemned and going to hellfire according to Jesus and Imam Ali and the prophets and the messengers, right? If I can't believe in both, I can't believe that Elon Musk's ideology and his plans are good and at the same time believe in the prophets and the messengers. It's not possible, right? So what I have to believe is that Elon Musk and these people are bad, actually. They're non-believers. They are people that don't believe at all. They're people that are anti-humans. So they are people that don't have the interest of human beings in their minds because they're allowing tens of thousands of people and children to die on a daily basis. And they're talking to me about their plans of, I don't know, going to Mars and other things of the sort. It's not possible. This is hypocrisy. He wants to go to Mars, the red planet. Jesus is telling me that he's going in the end to the red lake, the red fire. This is also what the Quran promises and the prophets and the messengers. And I have to choose who I'm going to believe in.
And they didn't make the right observations. I mean, they're saying that they figured out that there is not enough on the planet, or that abundance isn't a thing here. Like the default state is not abundance. So yeah, it's wrong. It's not even intelligent. I mean, it's not even a good observation of what's going on.
It's not a good observation of what's going on, and there is going to be a reckoning one day. And in the, in the words of the Torah and the Bible and the words of the prophets and the messengers, the promises, the prophecies of the divine just state and the things that are to come, we find verses like in the Holy Quran, where it says, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ الْوَارِثِينَ. And we want to bestow our grace and blessings upon those who were oppressed and made weak in the land, and we wish to make them imams, and we wish to make them the inheritors. And the inheritors are Muhammad and the family of Muhammad in the first degree, but also their Shia and the orphans and the widows and all of the weak, right? And there are many prophecies and verses that state that the weak or the meek will inherit the earth, that the poor people are the ones that are going to inherit the earth, that at some point something very interesting happens, right? All of those who were oppressed in the state of the shaitan are the ones whom become enabled in the divine just state. And those who were enabled in the state of the shaitan, the tables are turned and they meet the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're the ones whom are, punished in the state of God. There's a narration that states that the states are only two. There's a state, right? A dawla, a country, a governance, a government of God, and there's a government of the devil. The government of God has not come into effect. It's not come to pass. The government of God is the government in which the ruler is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that government and in that state, the poor people are enabled. And the narration states that these poor people, while they were living in the state of the shaitan, they got nothing. And anybody who gets anything in the state of shaitan does not have a share in the government of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that is taken from him as much as he's enjoyed, right? So if this is the state of the shaitan or the state of the devil now, then all of the people who are enjoying that state are actually effectively devils, right? They are the current oppressive rulers and tyrants, and they are also all of those successful, quote-unquote, business people or elite that are enjoying control over the world. In other words, if I were to believe in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, well, then I can identify this 1% elite that own more than 95% of the human wealth. I can identify them and say with a very clear conscience that these individuals are devils. These are the children of Iblis himself that he appointed, and because of their dedication to him, he has enabled them in the land. And that's why you'll find that most of them are even non-believers. They don't believe in God altogether. They're atheists. If you ask them, they'll say that is the case. And we were just speaking about that, how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna are having this discourse, and non-believers in a God, people that believe that things just naturally came into effect, the world just created itself, so to speak, that these people are actually devils, as identified in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna and them. Now, this does not mean that there aren't good people that grow up in the quote-unquote palace of Pharaoh, and they end up giving up their wealth to support the Jesus of the time, or to support the Qa'im, or to support the messenger in the end times. Of course, that door is open to them, as it was in the time of Jesus. When the rich man went to him, Jesus didn't close the door and say, "You're condemned." He just told him that if you want to join this ship, if you want to be with me, my people are the poor. If you would like to be with me, then you have to be with my people. You have to give them back their rights. You have to let my people go. You have to let my people's belongings go and give them back to them. And the elite are terrified of a revolution of the hungry. You find, even as days are going forward, more and more hashtags, more and more shouts, more and more mottos are being raised, and signs that state "eat the rich," and people are becoming more and more disgruntled and dissatisfied with the centralization of wealth in the hands of so few. And it's a very dangerous thing that we're seeing right now, because these wealthy elite are willing to spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in the development of technologies such as artificial intelligence and robots. And they're wanting to place these robots that are operating on artificial intelligence in positions of governance, in positions that would eliminate the need for human labor. They're replacing human beings. And so we're entering into a very dark matrix type world, a Terminator type world, where you literally have, real life imitating art, and art imitating real life, where we have the sons of the devils allowing for tens of thousands of children to die on a day-to-day basis, and they'd rather spend their money in ways that would ensure that they can control the masses, and that poor people would never stand a chance to revolt and take back the riches and the wealth that was already ordained to be their rights by God Almighty according to the scriptures, and yet it was stolen from them by a group of elite that don't amount to more than 1% of the human population. Can you imagine that? These people that have contemplated and thought about the possibility of eliminating and were responsible for mass genocide. I mean, even if you look into, who was funding Hitler? You're German. Who was funding Hitler? It was the banks that were funding Hitler. It was the rich people that were funding Hitler. So if you believe that Hitler was bad, and you believe that genocide is bad, then who was the one that was funding him, and for what purpose does that serve? It is a group of 1% on the population that are willing to eliminate 95% of the population so that they can continue to live at the same standard that they're living at. They're the ones that are responsible for funding every single war. This 1%, if they were to be removed, if they were to not be enabled in the way that they are enabled today, 95% of the planet would be in a state of great prosperity. In fact, the entire planet would be in a state of prosperity so long as they followed somebody who was truly ordained by God and had humanity's interest at mind.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, people have this wrong idea of happiness or how to be happy. They think it comes by hoarding stuff or oppressing others, and it's really the wrong assumption of what the default state on the planet should be, that God wanted everybody to be happy. And it's an easy thing, really. Like if you say, Father, that poverty would be eliminated or the needs of people, and that it's enough to live together peacefully, that's enough to be happy, and then there's nothing to chase after anymore. Like, yes, and even Elon Musk should know that.
We're gonna do a full episode about happiness one day. But in summary, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you that true happiness is achieved when other people are happy. We find happiness, human beings were created in such a way that we truly become happy when we see other people happy. To grant happiness to others and to do for others is the source of human beings' happiness. If human beings were taken out of the rat maze that they were placed in, if they were taken out of the guinea pig wheel that they are placed in by the elite, where they have to constantly chase and put all of their energy and their thought and their focus into the daily bread, right, and the sustenance and their needs that they need on a day-to-day basis, if they were provided those needs, if they just got that $35 per person per day, if they got their 3 meals, if they got their clothing, if they each and every one of them had a house to live in, if they weren't occupied anymore, if the dollar became nothing more than a piece of paper for them, if gold and silver lost its value, the human being would still remain unsatisfied and unhappy, but he would be comfortable. And now he would have the ability to seek happiness, and he would only find happiness in doing for others. And so the human being in the divine just state, having all of his basic needs taken care of, he would begin to want to serve mankind. And the new currency which would emerge would be a currency of services, accomplishments, all right? A sense of pride, a sense of satisfaction. That would be the new sought after gold and silver that people would desire. And so they would, each and every one of them, compete with one another, not in hoarding wealth, but in virtues. And they would compete with one another in establishing things or creating things that would further assist mankind in achieving its collective goals of prosperity on the planet.
Yeah, you taught us, Father, that everybody has a God-given gift, just anything. And I used to wonder, like, how is it possible that a person has a perfect job? And is it possible that jobs that I wouldn't like at all, that there's somebody who likes them? And I found in your, mini divine just state so far, even though globally it's very big, that there's always somebody who loves the job and they're like so good at it. And it made me relax like year by year. And I had to put down like all my wrong assumptions about life, really. I just found that if we let go more, that God already had a plan for everything, for everyone. And it's more about like relaxing into the situation. And God would facilitate for us if we can't function in a place, that we get to a place where we can function. And it's not that like complicated. With you, like nothing is hard or complex. While other leaders, they would teach the society that guiding a society is extra hard. You can only do it if you force the people all the time to do what they have to do against their will. And that's then for the greater good. But I didn't find that true here.
Yeah, and I think that you can see in the example of our community here that the reality that we are living in proves exactly what you just stated. For you find here in the community that we live in, our little mini divine just state in which we share in all things and nobody has to worry about their daily bread. We find that there are people that really love to go on television, on our satellite stations and talk and discuss and be there for the people, right? Yeah. And they're very charismatic. And there are other people that hate that. They're shy. They have a different nature. They rather work behind the scenes transcribing, right? Or editing or working behind the camera. You have other people that are passionate about, for example, driving, and they provide these services for other members of the community, happily so. You have yet other individuals that are passionate about cooking or baking. You have yet another group of believers that are passionate about protecting and serving in that way and making sure that the borders to our gate are secure and that we and our children are safe from any invaders or thieves or child molesters or whatever else dangers exist out there. And yet another group of people are passionate about cleaning and they love to go forward and ensure that the place smells good and the place looks good and everything is arranged in a nice way. And the other people are passionate about beautifying the place that we call home, and they paint the beautiful images that we see here in the basilica and all around. And so, yes, human beings will naturally find something in which they are passionate about doing. And if they find that there is a particular job that nobody wants to do, they will take great pride in doing that particular activity and service and excelling at that in order that they would shine. They take it as an opportunity to really shine in the community doing something that nobody else would want to do. And so if we take that and we, place it on a mass scale in a divine just state, we'll find that people will naturally do these things. They'll fill these jobs very quick and peacefully so, and without any suffering.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if people treat each and every one as their own selves and keep that in mind, and they focus on eliminating poverty and focus on sharing in the wealth that they have, collectively we can create a paradise on earth, and collectively we can together, all of us, put out the fires of hell, and collectively we can enter into a higher realm, a higher state, live on a greater planet, go into an everlasting Garden of Eden in the hereafter. Thank you so much, Runa, for joining me, and inshallah I look forward to many other episodes together.
Thank you, Father.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.